I'm with Archbishop Foley Beach, the new Archbishop of the Anglican Church in North America. You've had a triumphant year in the United States. You've come abroad here by invitation to the Primates meeting, and there's been unique developments over the week that I'd like to get a chance to talk with you about. First, let's talk quickly about your first year. How was serving in the Anglican Church in North America?
It's been an incredible privilege to see what God has been doing in our midst. We have a dynamic province. It's incredible what the Lord is doing, touching lives. We have people that are giving of themselves in ways that I thought were not possible. So the province has been great. Going around and visiting some of our partners as well throughout the world has also been a tremendous privilege, very humbling to see the way they honor and respect us and what we're doing here. We've just kind of lived through what we're living through, but they view it as a tremendous sacrifice for the faith, and there's much respect, which I did not realize was there.
Just like yourself, the Archbishop of Canterbury has served in a new role as the Archbishop, and he's traveled around the world talking to primates, trying to kind of repair the fabric that was torn years ago, and managed to create and invite people to a primates meeting, and somehow you made the invitation list. How does that happen?
Well, it happens because of the influence of the Global South. We're now a fully recognized partner province of the Global South, and the influence of our GAFCON primates as well, who represent the majority of the Anglican Communion. And since they recognize the Anglican Church in North America as fully Anglican, and they treat me as an Archbishop and primate, that's something that he had to wrestle with. And I guess in his judgment, he felt like to be able to bring everybody together, it would be important for me to be invited.
First day, the primates from around the world show up, and they come into Canterbury Cathedral, and it's a special time. The Archbishop of Canterbury did something unique.
Actually, it was my favorite part of the week, and I'll remember it probably for the rest of my life. He set aside a time for prayer and fasting, and he closed the cathedral down and gave it totally over to us to be able to walk and to pray and to use different chapels and to spend time with the Lord. And so it was a tremendous time to be able to do that at the beginning of our meetings here this week.
So the meeting starts up and it's time to set an agenda. Walk me through the first day.
Well, the Archbishop of Canterbury had sent out to us a letter months ago asking for items that we would like on the agenda. And so people began to send things in, and then we get another letter showing what everybody had sent in and giving another deadline of when items had to be in. We arrive on the first day, and so when he calls us together, he hands us a sheet of paper with all these items listed, and they all have a letter by them, and then he asks again, is there other items that you would like on the agenda? And then at that point, he said, for the first part of our time together, let's try to determine 4 items that we're going to discuss. And everybody was given a piece of paper, and you wrote on your number 1 item. And we did that until we had the first 3 items on the list. And the first item was the way it was expressed on the agenda. Whoever had submitted it was this is how it was listed: our response to the actions of the Episcopal Church's General Convention 2015. And that was the number 1 issue that folks wanted to talk about.
Ironically, that's not the big issue. The big issue is maybe the last 20 years.
Yes.
You could probably name off 10 different things that are grievances with the Episcopal Church. They've deposed some 700 clergy. They've spent millions of dollars on lawsuits. From the outside world's perspective, General Convention was just a symptom of something much, much worse. So that made the top list.
Yes, that made the top list. And I think the key thing was that galvanized the other primates into thinking that the doctrine of marriage has now been changed by a province. Is this acceptable? Mm-hmm. And that galvanized people to focus on that issue. Yes, they've been ordaining non-celibate homosexuals for years, same with the Anglican Church of Canada, and we could go through a whole litany of things violating not only biblical theology, but biblical morality and ethics. That became the focal point, and that's where we spent all the week, most of the week, was focusing on that issue.
What was the Archbishop of Canterbury's response on how to deal with the conflict in the room?
And the conflict in the room?
It's the understanding of the press that he wanted to employ a technique called Delphi, where you divide people up and have them discuss it to the point where you all agree that it's not as bad as you thought it was.
The Archbishop was, I think, I don't know how to say this more clear, but the process we went through was fair. Mm-hmm. He treated us with respect. He treated us with dignity. Everybody could speak, and he would allow folks to, he'd number them off, and everybody would be able to say their mind. There was one time when we were broken into small groups about one issue, and that's, to me, was just in a typical way you do it in a youth group. You used to divide kids up and talk about this issue, and you come back and talk about it. I didn't know it had an official name, but evidently it does. But that went nowhere. It just, actually, it frustrated everything even more, and so we had to go to a different place on trying to resolve it. And at this point of the meeting, we had all agreed, it was consensus, that the Episcopal Church, in changing their canons, had violated the doctrine of marriage for the Anglican Communion. Everybody was in consensus about that. The issue was then, and this is why we wrestled all week, is what are the consequences for that? And almost everybody, literally almost everybody, felt there should be consequences. The issue was, what should the consequences be?
We learned that one of the questions was, should we have the Episcopal Church voluntarily step out of the communion? And then we learned that they were actually forced to step out of the communion. What was the turning point there?
Well, they were not willing to voluntarily withdraw, even with the pain and the division that they have caused and Canada has caused. They're not willing to do that. And so then it became, what kind of consequence? And they aren't, and this is where those of us who wanted stronger sanctions were disappointed. They're still in the communion. They just can't participate in certain areas, which are key areas. I mean, basically the whole leadership of the communion they're now excluded from until they meet with their next general convention and respond to all of this. So they'll still be around.
What is unclear to the world is what they have to do to be unsanctioned.
They have to change, from our perspective, they have to return to biblical and historical theology of marriage. Mm-hmm.
So they would have to undo their canon of same-sex blessing of marriage. How does a young man from Georgia become voice and vote at a Primates meeting?
Only by the supernatural intervention of the Lord. I have no idea.
Were you surprised when that was given to you, or?
I really was, and I have to say that again, the Archbishop treated me with utmost respect, as well as the other primates. But at some point in the meeting, when we were going to do some other business, both Canada and TEC were asked if they thought I should leave, and they graciously said, no, he can stay. And so on the issue of voting on the actual sanctions, I just didn't feel I really didn't feel it was appropriate for me to speak into that. One is, I'm not an official part of the official structure of the communion yet, but secondly, just in conscience, since we've reacted against all of that, it's obvious where I would vote.
Yes. Now, you pretty much went into the meeting with about a dozen primates really supporting the Anglican Church in North America. You walk out with much more people with a good rapport for what's happening in the ACNA. You gave witness to the growing church. You were able to give testimony to the church. What does this time with the primates do for the ACNA?
I think it was tremendous, not only for ACNA but for GAFCON. But I was able to give witness, to share how we came into being, and I laid it out right there with TEC in Canada there. I was able to talk about how we've grown, some of the ministries we're doing, and I also gave all the primates our new catechism, and pointed out that the editor of that had been deposed by one of the primates sitting there, J.I. Packer. But I didn't mean, it just kind of came out when I was giving it out. But they were very supportive and very receptive, and I think they view, for the most part, that we are fully Anglican in what we're doing, especially since we're recognized by so many Anglicans around the world. And of course, when I say recognized, we're in full communion with them.
This was a good day for good week for the Archbishop of Canterbury. Going in, there was a very good chance of a split. The voices and the statements were Canterbury is going to have to take it or we leave. There was a time during this meeting when some of that changed and something else happened. I don't know when and where, but is this going to be very good in the long run for GAFCON?
I think absolutely. The relationships that were built, the discussions that were had, the commonalities that people saw that we all had together, I think it was tremendous for GAFCON. I think the GAFCON coalitions not only did it knit us together stronger, with stronger binds, but others want to be a part of that, and so we'll see how all that pans out. I also think that it's important to say the Archbishop, although he's going to be criticized by those in the left, especially the secular world, we came in with reports that there was no way we'd be able to stay together. And 3/4 of the primates found a way for us to be able to stay together. So we've got 3 years to work on it. We'll see what happens. Now, does this mean that the Anglican Church in the United States of America, the Anglican Church of North America, who we are, and our partners around the world will be able to have communion and be in full communion with TEC and Canada? Absolutely not.
This meeting went for a whole week. Was there ever a point when the Archbishop of Canterbury said, what is it going to take for the sides to reconcile?
No, but we did have a point in the meeting where there was actually discussion about the value that ACNA was bringing to the communion, and many primates got up and spoke to that. Some were having a difficult time with it, and some of the primates that didn't realize what was going on, had been going on, said, well, this is a North American problem. They just need to get together and be reconciled. And so I was able to explain to folks how we began, remind them that now we're at a place almost, and it'll be interesting to see where we are with the numbers, where there are now more people in the Anglican Church of North America who were never in the Anglican Church of Canada or the Episcopal Church. They were never in it than were, that we're growing, that we're not even the same entity that began years ago. And so the idea of reconciliation, just the ethos, first of all, the ethos of the organization, but then theological, I shared that, first of all, unless there is repentance from their unbiblical theology and morality. Secondly, I said, if you're serious about this, call the lawsuits off immediately, call them off now. I looked at Michael Curry in the eye. I said, if you're serious about reconciliation, call them off now. Third, I said there would need to be restitution for the millions of dollars that were taken from our people in property and buildings. And then fourth, I said, restore to us our pensions. And what most people don't realize is, yes, IRS law in the United States, this is a United States issue. Canada was able to keep their pensions. But if you retire as a priest, there's a formula that's used and you get a large amount. If you retire as a layperson, it's a small amount. Well, we've all been deposed and we're considered as lay people. So for many of our retired people, their pension now that they paid in for years and years and years is just a minimal little thing. So I said, restore to us our pensions. In order to do that, you would have to rescind your depositions that you had against us. And you could feel silence in the room, but people then felt the gravity of what's been done and where we are. And I mean them no ill will. I pray that God will lead them to a place of repentance. But the other thing that's so important about all of this is we're talking about millions and millions of souls that are being affected by this false teaching. And they're being led not into eternity with God, but into an eternity away from God. And that's what's so serious. And so it was a privilege to be here this week, and I'm glad that I was given the opportunity. I hope that Jesus Christ was honored not only by my presence and my actions, but my words as well.
How did the tallest guy in the room avoid any sanctions for his province?
Because it was TEC that was on the agenda. Mm-hmm. We never got to Canada, although Canada kept being referred to. Mm-hmm. And Canada, he did get up and share where they are, quite without any, actually he seemed quite excited about the opportunity that they're going to be voting on it this summer. And so it hasn't been addressed yet, but maybe this will send a strong message, now, it isn't subtle, that if they go down this route, that their church might be in the same position.
One of the primary reasons the Archbishop of Canterbury did this is because he needs to reboot the communion. Is this going to be an ability now to open up a Lambeth conference? Was it enough rapport for something like that?
I don't know, and because I had to leave early, I know that was going to be discussed later on, and I don't know what they decided. Perhaps at his press conference, whenever he has that, that will be answered.
And the number one question in my email box is what happens with the recognition of the ACNA? You had voice and vote. You were recognized as an archbishop. What's ACNA's recognition according to the Archbishop of Canterbury?
He would still probably say that we are a church in the Anglican tradition, but he would fully acknowledge that we're in communion with the majority, or provinces that represent the majority of Anglicans around the world. This wasn't the forum for that to change, for that official status to change, and the process you have to go through, and that's something that we would have to really pray about as a province and seek to work together. Is this something we want to officially apply for and go through and go through the process?
As we close, what is the value of the prayers from around the world for this weekend?
You could feel it. It was so tangible. You could just sense the presence of God and the strength. I mean, just personally, last week I had our College of Bishops meeting. If you've ever led a bunch of bishops, you'll know how challenging that is. I mean, although we've got great and godly bishops, and then got on an airplane from there and came to England, and then had this intensity all week. How I'm even standing, have any energy, that's just me. But also the wisdom that seemed to come through again and again, and the primates from the Global South and GAFCON stood up again and again, even when we weren't talking about this issue, and were leading in the communion issues. You could just sense the presence of God all over it. So I can't thank people enough for the prayers, and I would say please don't stop praying.